Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know, uh, when it comes to owning a home, there's always something to think about, whether it's, maintenance or upgrades, or in this case, insurance. Today, we are talking all about flood insurance.
A topic that can be surprisingly complex.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been doing a lot of research recently, and, honestly, it's a bit of a jungle out there. So many different options, policies, and, well, frankly, a lot of misinformation.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that surprised me the most is just how much variation there is in pricing. I mean, you would think flood insurance is flood insurance, right?
Right.
But that's not the case at all.
Yeah, and this is something that really stood out to us in this report we've been digging into called Affordable Flood Insurance 2024. Get free quotes.
Great report, by the way.
Yeah, it's packed with insights. For example, they mentioned that flood nerds have helped their clients save over $3 million. $3 million in just the past 2 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's pretty impressive. And then on top of that, their average client rating is like 4.9 stars out of 5 NAC.
Which speaks volumes about their service.
Yeah, for sure. But here's another thing that kind of blew my mind. Apparently, 85% of insurance agents who sell flood insurance aren't specialists.
Yeah, that's right.
85%.
They're generalists who might dabble in flood insurance, but they might not have the deep knowledge to really get you the best deal.
So it's like going to, going to your general practitioner for brain surgery.
Exactly. You wouldn't do that.
You want a specialist, right?
Absolutely. Flood insurance is no different.
You want someone who really knows the ins and outs of this stuff.
Precisely someone who understands the nuances of flood risks, different policy options, and all the factors that can impact your premiums.
Which brings us to another interesting point from this report.
Right.
Have you heard of these flood nerds?
Oh, yeah. Flood nerds are like the insurance whisperers. They specialize in finding people the best flood insurance deals.
Okay, so they're like those friends we all have who are amazing at finding travel deals online. Except these guys are all about flood insurance.
That's a great analogy.
And apparently they're really good at it. I mean, helping people save millions of dollars, that's not...
It's incredible. And their client testimonials are glowing.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so before we get too deep into the world of flood nerds, I think it's important to take a step back and talk about why flood insurance is even necessary in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, a lot of people might assume that they're already covered under their standard homeowner's insurance, but that's not always the case, right?
You're absolutely right. It's a common misconception.
So why is that? Why doesn't a typical homeowner's policy cover flood damage?
Well, flood damage is considered a separate type of risk, and most standard policies specifically exclude it. It's kind of like how your car insurance doesn't cover damage from an earthquake.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's just a different category of risk.
So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I probably need flood insurance, but man, that sounds expensive.
Well, first of all, I'd say peace of mind is priceless. You know, the average flood claim is around $35,000. That can really set you back financially if you're not prepared.
Yeah, no kidding.
But secondly, flood insurance doesn't have to break the bank.
Okay, good to know.
There are ways to save money, and that's where those flood nerds we mentioned come in.
Ah, okay. So they can help people find more affordable options.
Yeah.
But how do they actually do that? Do they have like some secret access to lower rates?
Not exactly. They have access to the same policies as everyone else, but what sets them apart is their expertise. They know how to shop around and compare quotes from both the NFIP, which is the government program, and private insurers to find you the best possible deal.
So they're doing the legwork that most people wouldn't have the time or the knowledge to do themselves.
Exactly, and they know all the right questions to ask and what information to provide to ensure you're getting accurate and competitive quotes.
So it's like having a personal shopper, but for insurance.
I like that analogy.
They're finding you the best deals and making sure you're getting the right coverage for your needs.
Precisely, and that's really valuable, especially considering that, as we mentioned earlier, most insurance agents aren't flood insurance specialists.
Right. 85%.
Exactly. So having someone on your side who really knows this stuff can make a huge difference.
Okay, that all makes sense. So they're basically saving you time, money, and potential headaches.
And they can help you understand the nuances of different policies, too. For example, private flood insurance can sometimes be 20 to 50% cheaper than the government option.
Wow, that's a big difference. So are you saying private insurance is always the better option?
Not necessarily. It really depends on your individual situation, and that's another area where a flood nerd can be helpful.
Okay, so they can assess your needs and advise you on the best course of action.
Exactly. They'll take into account your location, your property value, your risk tolerance, and all those factors to determine the best approach for you.
So it's not just about finding the cheapest policy. It's about finding the right policy.
Precisely.
Okay, so what are some of the factors that actually affect flood insurance costs?
Well, location is a big one, obviously. The higher your flood risk, the higher your premiums are likely to be.
Right.
But there are other factors too, like the age and construction of your home, your deductible, and even the amount of coverage you choose. And here's where it gets interesting. Even seemingly small changes to your property can affect your premiums.
Oh, really? Like what?
We'll take elevation certificates, for example.
Elevation certificate.
Yeah, it's a document that shows the elevation of your home in relation to the base flood elevation, which is basically the level to which floodwaters are expected to rise during a flood event.
Okay.
The higher your home is above that base flood elevation, the lower your risk of flooding.
Right.
And therefore, the lower your insurance premiums will be.
So it's like a report card for your house's flood risk.
Exactly. It's proof that your house is less likely to get swamped.
Got it.
And then there are things like flood vents.
Flood vents.
Yeah, they're openings in the walls of your home that allow water to flow in and out during a flood. They help to equalize the pressure inside and outside the building, reducing the risk of structural damage.
Oh, so it's like a pressure release valve for your house.
Exactly. And having flood vents properly installed can also lead to lower insurance premiums.
Really?
Yeah, because it demonstrates that you've taken steps to mitigate flood risk.
So it's not just about accepting your flood risk. It's about actively trying to reduce it.
Precisely. And a flood nerd can be a valuable resource in helping you identify and implement these mitigation strategies.
Okay, that's good to know. So we've got elevation certificates and flood vents. Are there any other mitigation strategies that homeowners should be aware of?
There are actually quite a few things like elevating your home, installing flood-resistant materials, and even relocating certain appliances or equipment above the base flood elevation can all have a positive impact on your premiums.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot to consider when it comes to flood insurance. It's not just about finding the cheapest policy, it's about finding the right policy for your specific needs and taking steps to mitigate your risk.
Absolutely. And remember, a flood nerd can be a valuable resource throughout this entire process. They can help you understand your options, find potential savings, and ensure you have the right coverage in place.
This has been super helpful, but I have to admit the idea of shopping around for flood insurance and comparing all these different options, it still feels a bit overwhelming.
I understand it can be a lot to take in, but that's precisely why these flood nerds exist. They take the hassle out of the process and make it easy for you to find the right coverage.
Okay, so let's, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember about flood insurance?
I think the biggest takeaway is that flood insurance is more nuanced than most people realize. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation, and there are a lot of factors that can affect your premiums.
And those flood nerds can be a valuable resource in helping you navigate this complex world.
Absolutely. They can help you understand your options, find potential savings, and make sure you have the right coverage in place.
Great. Well, we'll continue our deep dive in part 2, where we'll explore the differences between the NFIP and private flood insurance in more detail.